Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Dr. Mrinmoy Pramanik. I teach comparative Indian language and literature at the University of Calcutta. Today we will discuss a module from Indian aesthetics paper, and this module is on Tagore and his contribution to Indian aesthetics. This module will introduce you to widely acclaimed literary personality Rabindranath Tagore and his contribution to Indian aesthetics. At the beginning, we will discuss the life and works of Tagore. Later, we will move to the discussion of arts and aesthetics. After this, we will discuss some of his writings, specifically non-fiction like what is art and the realization of beauty, and see how intricately he explicates his phenomenology of art and aesthetics. At the end, we will try to find out how Tagore has been one of the major contributors of Indian poetics. So after going through this module, you will have an idea of aesthetics in general and more specifically of Tagore's ideas about art and aesthetics. Now let us talk about life and works of Tagore. Rabindranath Tagore is a polymath, social and religious reformer, poet, novelist, dramatist, musician, essayist, short story writer and painter. He is credited to have written travel diaries, autobiographies, operas, and also did drawings. He wrote the lyrics and composed the music of our national anthem, Jana Gana Mana, Thou art the ruler of all minds. And Bangladesh also chose one of the Tagore's song, Amar Sonar Bangla, as the national anthem of Bangladesh. Tagore is widely read, and his music composition and songs known as Rabindra Sangeet is very popular among Bengalis. Tagore explored all the literary genres, but he is primarily known as a poet. Rabindranath Tagore, Kavi Rabindranath Tagore, Sir Rabindranath Tagore, Vishwa Kavi, Nobel laureate in literature 1913, also known as Gurudev. He was born in 7th May 1861 in the Tagore family. He was the 14th child of Debendranath Tagore and Saroda Devi. Tagores were wealthy landlords. Dwarkanath Tagore, Tagore's grandfather, was a social reformer. The family has produced many successful writers, musicians, civil servants, etc. Tagore's father, Debendranath Tagore, was a social reformer and who advocated Brahmo Samaj, a social and religious movement. Later, Tagore also upheld the vision. Rabindranath Tagore spent his early life within the boundaries of his family estate. He could not adjust to the formal education system. He was tutored at home where he learned science, mathematics, history, arts, etc. Tagore began to write poetry at very early age under the pseudonym of Bhanu Singho, and some he wrote anonymously. Later he regularly began to write for magazines like Bolaka and Bharati. His first collection of poetry, Kabi Kahini, Tale of a Poet, was published in 1878. By this time, he also wrote his first short story, Vikharini, The Beggar Woman, in 1877. Tagore travelled extensively to various parts of the world. He first went on an Indian tour with his father. Later, at the age of 17, he went to England, University College of London, 1878 to 1880, to become a barrister, but returned without completing it. During his stay in London, he wrote the poem Nirjhore Shopno Bhango, The Fountain Awakened from Its Dreams, 1882. Manasi, The Ideal One, 1890, and Shonattori, The Golden Boat, poetry in 1894. Chitra, a play in one act, 1896. Kotha o Kahini, Tales and Stories, 1900. Noibeddo, 1901. In 1901, Tagore laid the foundation of the school Shantiniketan, following the tradition of ashrama, where emphasis is to impart education in a peaceful, harmonious and natural environment. Today it is widely known as Vishwabharati University. A year after the foundation of Shantiniketan, that is in 1902, Tagore's wife Mrinalini Devi passed away. In her memory, he wrote a collection of poems called Smaran in Memoriam. Tagore wrote prolifically like Khya poetry in 1906, Raja play in 1910, translated as The King of the Dark Chamber, Gitanjali song offerings in 1910, Dagghar, the post office in 1912, Achalayatan, the immovable in 1912, The Gardener in 1930, The Crescent Moon 1913, Giti Mallo or Wraith of Songs 1914, Songs of Kabi 1915, Stray Birds 1916, Sadhana, The Realization of Life 1916, and Bolaka in 1916, The Flight of Cranes, and the poems Fruit Gathering 1916, The Gardener 1915 and The Fugitive in 1921. Tagore wrote novels like Gora in 1910, Ghare Baire, The Home and the World in 1915 and Yoga Yog or Cross Current in 1929, Glimpses of Bengal selected from the letters of Sir Rabindranath Tagore 1885 to 1895 was published in 1920. Later he wrote Muktodhara, The Waterfall 1922 and Rakto Karabi Red Oleanders in 1926. Tagore passed away on 7th August 1941 and his birthplace Jorashako. Tagore was a prolific writer of par excellence who immensely enriched the Bengali literature as he majorly used to write in Bengali. Today most of his writings, both fiction and non-fiction, are available in English translation. Tagore had his phenomenology of art and aesthetics that he discussed in two of his essays, mainly What is Art and The Realization of Beauty. But there are few more essay books where we can find his idea of aesthetics, his own idea of aesthetics, which is coming from mainly from the practice of Upanishada, what he has observed from childhood in his family, that his father and the other members of Brahmo Samaj, they were practicing, they practiced the Upanishada, and the idea of beauty he primarily gathered, he found adapted from Upanishada. There are different books on essays like Shantiniketan and Shahitya, and all these books we can find, from all these books we can find the idea of aesthetics of Tagore. Now let us talk about the aesthetics idea, aesthetics thought of Tagore. The word aesthetics actually derives its meaning from the Greek word aesthetikos, meaning of sense perception. The term was introduced into the philosophical lexicon during 18th century. The term aesthetic has come to be used to designate, among other things, a kind of object, a kind of judgment, a kind of attitude, a kind of experience, and a kind of value. Aesthetics as a branch of philosophical study of art came much later. It was art that came first, and later people began to appreciate, interpret and evaluate it. Plato's Phaedrus and Republic were written long after the artists of the Aurignacian age executed their cave paintings. Bharat Muni's Natya Shastra came long after art creation of different variety. Whatever a man creates, any piece of art, painting, sculpture, a creative writing of poem, and if that leaves lasting effects and gives a sense of value and joy, then this work is known as beautiful. Beauty lives in and moves in an individual. In other words, beauty is perception. Everything that is created causes feelings of pleasure, sensual and spiritual, but it is all perception. It is the perception of an individual that creates emotions in him. In other words, emotions play a significant role in aesthetics. That is, in appreciating beauty. For example, beauty is expressed through an object, and this object could be either a human being or an idea of season or anything that pleases an individual. The moment one looks at it or feels it in abstract sense, then emotion awakens. It also comes to mean that aesthetic emotions can be satisfied only in the imagination. In common terminology, aesthetics is the study of sense which later began to critically raise serious philosophical questions and thoughts about art, culture, and nature. Aesthetics is the study that not only appreciates beauty but also gives new interpretation to it. Nevertheless, aesthetics is an integral part of our daily life. It is difficult to say whether one understands and appreciates art fully or learn to do so. However, we encounter artistic creation and perceive them as it pleases us. Art and aesthetics. Art and aesthetics are two different terminologies. Art is a creation. Aesthetics, as a branch of philosophy of art, investigates, evaluates, and interprets art. Art is an objective, whereas aesthetics is subjective. As per the dictionary meaning, art is a skill acquired by experience, study, or observation, a branch of learning, archaic, an occupation requiring knowledge or skill, the conscious use of skill and creative imagination, especially in the production of aesthetic objects, archaic, skillful plan, the quality of state of being artful, decorative or illustrative elements in printed matter, etc. The concept of art is very wide and its uses can also vary. However, art has always been a creative work. Either it is learned as a skill or should be or studied or as an occupation. It is significant to know that both art and aesthetics have an inseparable connection. Tagore's writing on art and aesthetics. Apart from exploring different genres of fiction, Tagore also wrote various essays on the subject of arts and aesthetics. Further, during his travel to various places in the world, he has delivered many talks on the subject of art and its appreciation. His Bichitro Prabandho 1907 contains important essays like Shondarjo Sambandho and Kabber Tatparjo, Shondarjo Sambandhe Santosh, Sahityer Tatparjo. Many of the English essays are lectures he delivered at UK and US during his visits there. One such is Personality, lectures delivered in America in 1917, with his other collection like Sahitya, Sahityer Pathe, Sahityer Swarup, and many others are very much important as he discusses various aspects of poetry, literature, art, music, value, creativity, ethics, importance, beauty, critics and criticism, so on and so forth. It is almost impossible to discuss all of these works in a single module, but we will try to discuss few of his ideas and concepts about aesthetics and poetics of Tagore. Now let us talk about Tagore and aesthetics. In order to understand Tagore's concept of aesthetics, it is necessary to know what art is for Rabindranath Tagore. In one of his essays from Personality, lectures delivered in America in 1917, is What is Art? He explains the meaning of art through man's personality, especially through his relationship with the world. He says, man's relationship with the world is manifold, like based on his needs of both physical and as well as the needs of the mind. Both body and mind needs food. Body is survived on food and mind on logic, reason, calculation, facts, laws, etc. According to Tagore, this is a physical man. He is busy in fulfilling his physical needs like hunger and thirst. Within this physical man resides another man called personal man, who has its likes and dislikes and wants to find something to fulfill its needs of love. It is the highest in man, this personal man. He says the personal man is found in the region where we are free from all necessity, above the needs both of the body and mind, above the expedient and useful. It is the highest in man, this personal man. The personal man belongs to the real world where we see it, feel it, we deal with it with all our emotions. Its mystery is endless because we cannot analyze it or measure it. We can but say, here you are. This is the world from wherein science leaves us and art takes hold of it. Tagore says, if we know what art is, then we can say what this world is with which art has such intimate relationship. In other words, man has very close relationship of love with this world. If we find the relationship between world and the art, then we will be able to understand man. It means art is for humanity and love for the world. Where can we find this world of art, which is the real world according to Tagore? He says, we see it, we feel it, we deal with it with all our emotions. Its mystery is endless because we cannot analyze it or measure it. We can but say, here you are, here lies the world of art. He draws an analogy between life and art and says, for art, like life itself, has grown by its own impulse, and man has taken his pleasure in it without definitely knowing what it is. Tagore reasons out the existence of art before defining it and makes an attempt to know to whom the art owes its existence. He inquires whether origin of art lies in some social causes, or it exists just art for its own sake, or it is an expression of some impulse. He then spells the reasons of art being in our lives, comparing the life of man and animal. He says animal is bound within the limits of its needs, but man, Tagore says, he earns a great deal more than he is absolutely compelled to spend. Here he is referring to the man's emotional and physical energy. It is the energy from where this science, philosophy and art come. Tagore avers man has a fund of emotional energy which is not all occupied with his self-preservation. This surplus seeks its outlet in the creation of art, for man's civilization is built upon his surplus. The surplus energy that man has and gain seeks a passage to exist. If man withholds this surplus energy, it is harmful to him. Thus man finds an outlet for its release. It is through art the surplus energy is released. Thus art is not just an object, but one finds emotions and expressions in it. In other words, man reveals himself through his art. As Tagore says, man reveals himself and not his objects. He says mere gathering of information does not make a man fully himself. This information does not reveal his true and organic self, who has the inherent power to select things from his surroundings in order to make them his own. He not merely piles up things outside him, but creates himself. He further says, when we experience anything aesthetically, we do not see only that object. A sweet song confers dignity on land, sea and sky, on the whole of existence. Great poets have taken upon themselves the task of proclaiming the glory of all that exists. Hence, for Tagore, the function of art is to remove the shadows which obscure the reality of the objective world as well as of the personality of man, and hereby to bring them together in very important together in intimate union. Further, the emotions occupy a very important place in Tagore's philosophy of art, for they are the principal instruments of man's unification and harmonization with the world. Tagore on beauty. Tagore begins his essay, The Realization of Beauty, by explaining the uses of anything that belongs to us, or anything that belongs to us or is ours. It is only because it gives us happiness. He says a thing is only completely our own when it is think of joy to us. The entire world, Tagore says, is given to us, and all of our powers have their final meaning in the faith, and by their help we are to take possession of our patrimony. He raises questions and asks, in this whole scenario, what is the function of beauty? Is it there to create a distinction between beauty and ugliness? Then it is going to create a hindrance of communication across the world. He further says it cannot be true because as long as realization is incomplete, world does not belong to us. The division persists. However, man does not limit his knowledge of anything, he keeps on adding to it. Similarly, the sense of beauty acts every day. His science is penetrating into the region formerly marked in his map as unexplored or inexplorable. To understand what beauty is, we need to begin with the division of beauty and non-beauty. Then the beauty comes to us and awakens our consciousness. Hence, it comes in a colorful manner to please us. Gradually, when our consciousness to understand beauty increases, then there is no discordant remains. Similar is the case of aesthetics. When we begin to recognize beauty easily in everything that is great and small, then we find it more in the unassuming harmony of common objects than in things startling in their singularity. In our perception, it is we who have this ugliness inside of us, otherwise everything that universe has is beautiful and pleasing. Now let us conclude our discussion. According to Tagore, beauty, perception, emotion, imagination and wholeness are the basic concepts of art and aesthetics. They not only define art but also connect art and aesthetics. Art is an expression of human emotion, and emotion is indispensable of art. Further, beauty lies in man's perception. However, to see beauty, man needs to be in harmony with his surroundings or universe. Tagore's concept and ideas related to art and aesthetics are very much influential. He has been an instrument of shift from the traditional Indian poetics to a new outlook. His concepts have contributed and shaped Indian poetics in a larger way. His essays and speeches are very much essential to understand his other literary writings as well as other writings of the period. Thus, Tagore has not only played the role of a famous literary personality but also a great critic of art of the time. Now let us summarize the whole discussion. In this module, you are introduced to the subject of aesthetics, more specifically of Tagore and his contribution to Indian aesthetics. In this module, we have presented life and writings of Tagore, further definitions and meanings of art and aesthetics and so on. Further, we have discussed Tagore's concept of art and aesthetics and how he has written on these matters. For more on this module, please find the e-text and learn more and self-assessment sections, and you can find all the details in e-text. Thank you.